Are you gonna be a videographer like your papa? You want to change all the settings on my camera? That's like my perfect nightmare right there. All right, so welcome back everyone. The sweet loaf, I can't blame you exactly, but I think I may have a suspicion that you have lost Papa's table wedges, and we might need to make some new ones. Can you help me with that today? Can you say hi, hi? All right, let's look at the table, and then we'll go in the shop and get these replaced. You gonna help me? All right, all right. So welcome back, everyone. This is the live edge table that I built several years ago. It's kind of interesting. Remember that we did that banjo, little banjo, I forget what you call these things, but when we did the live edge, I cut this tabletop on the sawmill and I left the curvature of the log. Well, it had that crack that was going in there, and I knew it was going to be in here really close to the wood stove, and anything you put by the wood stove because of the constant heat it's really makes wood move a lot. But it was kind of interesting to see that it did indeed work. It's sticking up a little bit proud there, but it stopped that crack. So if you have a wood table that's cracking, you can fix it. What is it, baby? Yeah, what's really helpful is when you touch my lens with your greasy paws. But what happened, so this is kind of the old style, and it's all held together with no fasteners, but with wedges. And I think the sweet loaf has pulled these wedges out, and then the dogs chewed them up, and then they ended up into the fire. So we need to put those together because this is the stretcher, and the wedges go in there and hold that tight. So without those, it's very wiggly and not safe. And I didn't even really notice it until just this morning. So let's head up to the shop. We'll make these. We'll make them with the old tools and knock this little project out.
Today is Patriots Day, which is the day of the Boston Marathon. And 2 years ago, we were there, and it was so much fun. I am not in the shape I was when I ran it then. And so it is time to get back into shape and to re-qualify for the Boston Marathon.
Mrs. W follows running, and one of your friends went to the marathon this year, and I think you had a little bit of, how do you say envy in Swedish?
Oh, well, I mean...
the Swedes don't envy, so they don't have a word for it.
Well, anyways, I was not
Tell
often
us about your Instagram,
yes.
Your new Instagram
Oh, but
page.
so I'm going to do a little Instagram, and it is going to be my accountability account to make me get out there and run, lose some of the extra weight I've put on, and just eat a little bit better.
So a year from today, we will, Lord willing, we'll be in Boston, and you'll be running.
That's the hope.
So I wrote down the dimensions here. I've got a couple options we need to choose from. So I've actually got a piece of fur left over. I think this was left over from the original table. I kept that off of an end so that if I needed to make a replacement wedge, I've had this happen before, I could use it. But I was looking through my pile, and when I did my stair treads, this is a CVG fir, clear vertical grain. It's my favorite wood right there. It's so beautiful. It doesn't have a knot in it. It's Douglas fir. And this was a stair tread, the stair treads that we used on the house. You can see it's got the bull nose. And all of those, I had to cut some pieces off. They were a little bit long. So I saved them because they're such nice wood. I think this is going to be perfect because it almost lines up ideally with the dimensions. So let me bring you in here a little tighter. We'll sketch this out, and then we'll make this all by hand. Let's lay this out so we get it right. I've got the dimensions here. Something I've adopted that's been really helpful to me, if you're like me and you've got like tons of little projects and things going on and you're trying to remember things, and the older you get, seems like your memory doesn't work as well as it used to, is I've got one of these, I keep these little spiral notebooks, and they fit really good in the back of your pocket. And I write these things down. So this is my list of things that I'm going to do today, of course, is to finish the wedges. And so then I put the job that I have to do and what I'm going to need to accomplish that, the photo gear, the wood, the different things. And I write my dimensions on here so that when I don't have to keep going back and forth because I can't remember them in my head all the time. Also, different things that I need to do. It's very handy. And then when you go back or when you go to the hardware store, if you have this in your pocket and you're trying to remember, what was it that I needed to get? Needed light bulbs or this and that, you can go back and do it just every day. Just start a new one or two or whatever. It's been really helpful to me. Okay, so this is going to work out really good. So what we have is this is our square hole. And it's got to be, the height has got to be exactly 1 inch, and then 7/8 is where the wedge will come into pinch. So it's got to be a little bit more on one side, a little bit less on the other. So back in the day, to get those nice cuts, those miters for imagine like a picture frame or casing around a window. The old guys came up with these miter guides. It's just basically a piece of hardwood that's got cuts, your popular cuts in there. So those are your 45s and your I don't know what that is. If that's 45 or 33, 22 and a half or whatever. But the one I primarily use is the 90-degree one. You can make these yourself, really simple. Something kind of interesting. So the name Jorgensen, they made a lot of really cool, they made nice clamps and different things. Whenever you see anything with a sun or sen on the end of it, it's often a Scandinavian name because how they did it was, you know, when they were giving names back in the day, it would be John, and then it would be John's son. So it was anything that's a John's son or anything like that, you can pretty much tell is a Scandinavian. But just clamp that in there. Now we can put our piece in, and we want to start with a nice, right angle there. So let's just trim that and cut that real quick. Over the years, I've tried lots and lots of saws, and I just keep going back to the Japanese saws. I think that they're my favorite. Why I like them, it's several things. They're so affordable, and you get two saws in one. You get the ripping teeth on one side, and you get the cross cut. Ripping, of course, is when you're cutting with the grains of the wood, and cross cut when you're cutting against it. So let's rip that. We'll rip that bull nose off there, but you just push this to one edge like this. We don't want to waste anything because that CVG fur is good for so many things, and we'll pick the right teeth. And if we lay this in here on the guide, this will. Let's see, it's different when you have Japanese saws because you cut on the pole, so I'll pull it against this fence. And then this will help us to make a nice straight cut. There we go. Let's see how good the cut is with a square. They're actually surprisingly accurate. Look at that's pretty good. Even this way, it's a little bit off. We'll clean it up with the plane there, but pretty close. Pretty amazing, huh? So we're going to need two of these. I'll typically just, when I get one done, I'll just use that for the template. When you're doing that, if you're cutting something, if you're doing a whole bunch of something over and over again, make sure you put a T on it so you use the same one every time. Because if you're cutting, let's say 12 pieces and you want them all to be the same, if you just go to the next, to the next, to the next, every time you cut, you make a minute, there's a little bit of difference, right? And then that will just grow and grow and grow and exponentially get worse. So you'll always, when you do a template, always stay with the same one. Now we need to lay out our angle. So we're 4 inches overall. Now where we come in contact with the pinch is going to be, there's our center line right there, is our 7/8, right? So we're going to come back here to, let's say we're going to come back here to, where do we want the pinch to come in? Probably about right here. Let's say right here, say 1.5 inches. So right, or 1.25 inches we are. So let's make this will be our 1 7/8 inches. So 1 7/8 inches is right here. So right there, so that's where the thickness needs to be, and then we can taper up. So we could hand plane that all down. That takes some time. A way that we can speed that up really quick is we can just overcut it a little bit. Just go on the waist side and cut this, and then that last little bit we'll bring down with the hand plane. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo here. I think the plane that we'll use, I'll use the little, I think this is the little number 2 Stanley. This is probably one of my favorite planes. It's one that I restored years ago. It was all rusty when I got it, and I love this little plane. It's a very tiny plane. It's really good for kids because their hands fit in it well and it's not too heavy, but it's also my favorite for doing really small detailed work like this. We'll clamp this up here in the vise, hold it up there so we can give ourselves, don't smash our knuckles like that. We should be able to see that line really well, and it shouldn't take too long. We should be able to just a little deeper. delightful wood to work with. That just is so fast when the planes are sharp. Let's see how we did here. Oh, that's perfect. It's just what I wanted. This type of construction is so cool to be able to build a piece of furniture that has no fasteners. You know, as I said, no screws or glue or anything. And once it's put together, and I'll usually move that thing back and forth a little bit. That wedge, the tighter you push it, the farther you push it in, the tighter it pulls the stretcher together, and you get a very rigid joint. And then if you need to take it apart, it's simply you can just knock it down. You pull your wedges out. All of this can be stacked in a flat for shipping. If you wanted to make this for a loved one that lives somewhere else or something like that, it's really a cool way to build stuff. So let's check the other side, because I made this all by hand, and my carpentry is a little crude sometimes and not super consistent. Yeah, I can see there. So this is too big. It's not clearing. It doesn't look right. We want that to be recessed in there a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just a little ways in there. That's part of the detail. So we'll just copy this, and we'll just take 1/8 off of it, and I think we'll have it. So we'll just put this, I'll match this up. This is the one that fit on the right side. Flush those edges, and we can put a mark on there. We don't want that to be the same. We want to lose not too much. A little goes a long ways with this. And remember, you can always take away, but you can never add. How about we just plane this one down? We won't do the cutting. It'd be kind of interesting to see. That's quite a bit of wood right there to remove. How long does it take? One thing that helps tremendously is put a little ballistol on the bottom of those planes. It's amazing. It takes away the friction. Now, it may look like that I'm just going back and forth on this. I'm actually, as I'm coming back, I'm just very slightly taking the pressure off of it. I'm trying to remind myself that I do favor the right-hand side. So I'm trying to learn. All right, so we're getting pretty close on that one side. We'll take a Let's try it one more time here. There we have it. That's what we wanted. Perfect. Nice to get that done. Now the table is rock solid. Actually, now that the Sweet Loaf she's a climber. She's like a little goat. I think what I'll do is I'll maybe take a little bracket and mount this directly to the wall, because it's such a skinny table that it is tippy. If you'd like to watch the video where I built this, I'll put it at the end. I think you might enjoy it. It was kind of a fun project. We harvested all the wood off of our place here, and it's some really pretty fir that we got that was from a beetle kill, but it was turned out nice. Now the old wedge was a little bit different size. You can see that the sun has faded it there. That will clear up as the sun is exposed to it. It'll kind of match the other stuff. Fir darkens over time, but there we have it. Another project done. This right here is my favorite part of finishing these projects, is to be able to cross them out. You really get a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day when you pull out your little list and you see all the things that you crossed off. Helps you to stay focused. Now remember, the key to keeping your shop and everything organized is the job is not finished until the tools are put away, right? So I'll just take a few minutes, and I wanted to point out with these old planes, now remember these, even the new ones, any plane you're going to use, this is all raw metal. And some people are more, I wouldn't say caustic, what's the word, corrosive than others. For me, wherever my thumbs touch, like wherever I rest a finger or something like that, especially up here, this will always rust. I don't know, there's something in alkali or what, who knows what it is, some science of some sort. But what I know, what defeats the rust is the ballistol or some sort of an oil. So what I do, as I've shared this before many times, I'll share it with you again. Ballistol is a great protectant for any metal, and if you just tip it upside and drip it on stuff, you really wasted it. Most of it you end up using too much, and it goes on the floor and all that. So a trick that I learned from Paul Sellers was he just took a little can. This is just a little like a gunsmithing rag, kind of a fine cotton rag, and so I'll just keep it in that metal tin, and then 3 or 4 times a year I'll just give it a little bit of a Ballistol in there, and I'll take it and I'll wring it out and just make sure that it's all coated 100%, and I leave it in that can. It's nice to have a can that has a lid on it so it doesn't evaporate. And this Ballistol, I mean, good grief, you guys that have been with me, this was sent to me by one of my subscribers, I mean, way back in the day, probably pretty soon after we first moved here, and it's still 3/4 full, and I use the Ballistol all the time, so it's a really good system. So I just, real quickly, my tools that are raw metal like that, I'll just hit them really quick, and that includes the chisels as well. If you're doing your chisels, you can do the same thing. You just take that wherever you touched, and don't touch it after you coat it. So wear a glove or something like that, but coat everything really good, and then put it back in its sheath, and then that will really protect it. And it really breaks your heart to spend all of the time of restoring a beautiful plane like this, and then not using it for a while, and coming back and see everywhere that you touched it, it's starting to rust. So you just don't want that. Hey, what are you doing?
Good day.
What is that?
Good day.
Did you just climb up on that chair? I don't know that you're supposed to have those.